This is way, way, way out of character for Jerry Jones. All right, welcome in. It is the September 2nd edition of the Breer Report. We are finally in a game week. We got the Cowboys and the Eagles on Thursday. We've got the Chiefs and the Chargers from Brazil on Friday. We got a full slate of games on Sunday. And of course, we're coming off of a full slate of college football games. And that's actually where we're going to start this week with what happened last night in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Now, at about 8:15 Eastern, things look pretty good for Bill Belichick and the Tar Heels. You got the pregame hoopla. You had the shots of the celebrities in the boxes, in the stands. You had Lawrence Taylor there. You had Michael Jordan there. You had a bunch of Bill Belichick's expatriate players, Randy Moss, Teddy Bruschi on the ESPN set. It felt like a celebration. And then that celebration continued into the first possession of the game with Tar Heels driving right down the field and going up 7-0 on TCU. And it looked like bright days ahead for UNC and Belichick and Gio Lopez and all those players who came from all of these different places to play for Belichick in Chapel Hill. And then they played the rest of the game. And I think if you look at that third quarter, it doesn't get much worse than that. TCU's first possession, first play, 75-yard touchdown. On their next possession, they convert a 3rd and 20 on a seam route right down the pipe. And then on the play after that, another easy touchdown in the run game, a 28-yard touchdown, untouched. You had a turnover for a touchdown later in the quarter. I mean, that third quarter was bad news bear stuff for the North Carolina Tar Heels. And so what does this mean from an NFL perspective? Well, I'm sure for a lot of people, it's going to be, another piece of evidence that's used in the Brady-Belichick debate because that debate never dies. But from a big picture standpoint, I do think we can look at this and ask some questions about where Bill Belichick's system, his schemes, his program is. Like a lot of the problems that you saw over the last couple of years in New England, scattershot quarterback play. Some of the fundamental issues on defense have cropped right back up at North Carolina. And his ability to turn over a roster, his ability to identify talent. They have 70 new players there. Was that the right thing to do? Or should they have tried to keep some of the guys that were already there, that were part of a bowl team last year at North Carolina in-house and develop them? There are lots of those questions to ask. And that's just from a college football perspective. Now, from an NFL perspective, if we're talking about Bill Belichick going back to the NFL game at some point, this is going to have to turn because a lot of the things that NFL owners were worried about before, which were Bill Belichick coming in and wanting to clean house, Bill Belichick coming in and wanting to bring in his own people at every level of an operation, Bill Belichick's ability to identify players and identify assistants around him, the right people, put the right people around him to build an organization, all that stuff's going to be under the microscope now. And what North Carolina decided when they hired Bill Belichick back in December was, we are going all in on Bill. We are going to let him hire Michael Lombardi. We're going to bring him in with his sons. We are going to let him turn over the roster. Bill, here are the keys. You take this program and you bring it in whatever direction you want to take it. And the result on Monday night did not look good. Now they have Charlotte next. They play UCF in 2 weeks, which that's probably the next toss-up game that they've got. And then the first weekend in October, they've got Clemson. And so I think Bill Belichick's candidacy as an NFL coach over the next couple of years is going to ride on what this looks like, because there were already a lot of teams that were out there looking for coaches over the last couple of hiring cycles that had a lot of big picture questions. And at least on the surface, after 1 week, a lot of those questions seem to be validated. Now, it's a long season. That's one game. North Carolina's got 11 more games to go in the regular season, potential bowl game. I don't know if we could talk about college football playoff, but it's certainly not out of the question after one loss. Seems very unlikely after what we saw, but not out of the question after one loss. Bill's got a lot of runway to change any narrative that's out there. But that looked really bad. And it looked really bad on a lot of different levels. And it validated, again, a lot of the things that you've heard over the last few months about things that are happening inside North Carolina's program. It validated a lot of the questions that NFL teams had about hiring Belichick over the last couple of hiring cycles. And I think, like, whatever happens with Bill over the next 3 months are going to go a long way to determining whether or not he'd ever coach in the NFL again. All right, second topic for the day. We did not get a chance to look at the big picture of the Micah Parsons trade last week because of the juncture at which it happened. It happened on Thursday night. We gave you guys a quick video. I want to give you a more thorough breakdown on each side of this deal right here, right now. And we're going to start with where the Packers are at on this and why I think this made sense for the Packers to pull the trigger on right now, and why for the here and the now, this is the right thing for Green Bay to do. The Packers have a lot of good players in their roster. The Packers have done a good job drafting and developing, obviously over the decades, but over the last 5 years in particular. And if you look up and down their roster, you can find a lot of very good players. On offense, you at the receiver spot, you got Jaden Reed. When he gets back from injury, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks. They drafted Matthew Golden this year. Tucker Kraft looks like he's going to be a really good tight end. Luke Musgrave's got potential at that position as well. You got Walker and Tom at the tackle spots, guys that have come up through their system. Obviously, at running back, they bring in Josh Jacobs from the Raiders a year ago. He's another good player. Jordan Love, you can put in that bucket as well. On defense, 4 first-round picks along the defensive line before this trade. Now, one of them's gone now, of course, but it was Kenny Clark, it was Devontae Wyatt inside, it was Lucas Van Ness, it was Rashawn Gary outside. Edgerrin Cooper's got a ton of potential at linebacker. Love Xavier McKinney at safety. Just a lot of very good players. The question coming into this year was how many of those players, including the quarterback, can elevate from very good to great. And what they're doing now by trading for Micah Parsons is they're bringing in a ready-made great player, a guy who can put them over the top. And there are a lot of fair questions about Micah Parsons' personality, his fit in a locker room. But the Packers feel like they're equipped to handle that because of the group that they have in the locker room right now, the players that they feel like are peers of Micah Parsons from an age standpoint, who already are grown men, who will be able to influence him in the right direction. And, defensively, what they're going to be able to do with him in Jeff Hafley's attacking upfield scheme, they're going to be able to put him in position to make plays and lean into the style that he already plays. And, a huge issue in Dallas, and we'll get to more of this in a minute, was when he wasn't sacking the quarterback. You saw him playing out of structure a bunch. He wasn't always the most disciplined player. So how do you harness that? Well, I think Jeff Hafley, because of the style of defense he plays, is going to lean into the way that Micah Parsons naturally plays anyway and give him responsibility without really choking out what he's best at. And so I think there's a good marriage there schematically, again, with, the number of players that they have, again, that are in that very good category, that are really good guys and leaders that can bring them along. They feel like that fit's going to work. It's obviously a lot of money to invest. $47 million a year is $47 million a year. But they feel like, based on what they already have in that locker room, they'll be able to get an even better version out of Micah Parsons than the Cowboys were able to the last couple of years, which is saying something. And Micah will be able to help elevate the level of everyone around him, maybe help some of those very good players become great. There's also a question about like the fit in Green Bay. I would mention that Micah did go to college in a place that's not totally unlike Green Bay, Wisconsin, and State College, Pennsylvania. So it's not like the small town thing will be completely foreign to him. All right, our third topic for the day is the Cowboys piece of this. And obviously we're going to see the Cowboys here in a couple of days, and there's going to be referendums issued on the Cowboys defense, on what the Cowboys look like without Micah Parsons as part of the equation. That's part of the deal when you trade away a player like this. And I think the way that you want to look at this again is from a big picture standpoint. What does this look like for the Dallas Cowboys organizationally? And the reality is that this is way, way, way out of character for Jerry Jones. He last traded a player of this magnitude in 1989. And that was, yes, the Herschel Walker trade. Since then, you cannot find another example of Jerry Jones trading away a star in his prime. It just does not happen. They've taken big swings to bring in stars. Guys going back to guys like Joey Galloway, trading for Charles Haley back in the day. Roy Williams was a big time trade when it happened. So we've seen them trade to bring in guys, Amari Cooper. We've seen them trade to bring in guys, big stars from other teams. But they rarely let stars go, and they do not trade stars away. It has not happened since Herschel Walker. So what does it signify? To me, it signifies what happened when Micah Parsons didn't take the offer the Cowboys put on the table in April. It signifies the discussions that were happening inside that organization and the questions that they started asking themselves after Micah decided not to take the deal that the Cowboys put in front of him. And those conversations were about, what do we want to be going forward? How do we break free of this? We're a really good 10, 11, 12 win team that makes the playoffs but doesn't go anywhere when we get there. How do we break through that glass ceiling? Because what we're doing isn't necessarily working. It's not broken, but it's also not working at the level you'd like it to work. They have the third longest drought, conference championship game drought in the NFL. They have not been to a conference championship game in 29 years. Only two franchises have gone longer. One's the Dolphins. The other one's the Browns, which this iteration of the Browns has only existed since 1999. Now they obviously carry over the history from the previous Browns, but the Browns that were around before that started the streak, are actually the Ravens now. So it's remarkable that the Cowboys are top 10 over that period in wins, and yet they have the third longest conference title game drought. So how do you break through? How do you change the dynamic if you're the Cowboys? Those are the sorts of conversations that they had when Micah Parsons walked away from the deal that they offered back in April. And the result of those conversations was, let's try to lean into our head coach. Let's try to see if we can do a better job of balancing out our roster. Let's see what happens if we try to change the dynamic in our locker room a little bit and empower some of the better leaders on our team, guys like Dak Prescott. And that didn't mean that they were completely out on the idea of bringing back Micah Parsons, but it was a discussion that they had where it's like, if we have to trade Micah Parsons, here's what we're looking at. Here's what we might want to do. Here's kind of the plan going forward for the next 5 years. And like, if we can, in Brian Schottenheimer's words, find a way to build the greatest culture in professional sports, which is what Brian Schottenheimer has said his goal is, like, how do we get there? Because you can't just get there with a coach standing in front of the room. That has to be owned by the players as well. So they get the 2 first-round picks for Micah Parsons, which is obviously a huge part of the deal. And having 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years gives them great flexibility, a great opportunity, as well as they've drafted. The Cowboys have been excellent in that area over the years. That gives them a chance to get younger and to reset and to really stock the roster with a ton of flexibility over the next 2 years of drafts. But the other thing they did is they asked for one player, and that player was Kenny Clark. And that's no mistake. That's symbolic of what they're trying to do here. Kenny Clark is a great pro. Kenny Clark is a great player. Kenny Clark is a great leader. And I can tell you that because I can tell you that the staff in Green Bay was excited to bring Micah Parsons in, but they were heartbroken that Kenny Clark had to be a part of the deal. And it killed those guys to hear that Kenny was outgoing. Now, obviously, you understand that it's going to cost you something to get a player like Micah Parsons. So that's just business in the NFL. But in sending Kenny Clark out the door, there were a lot of people that were disappointed to see him go. And I think that really illustrates what the Cowboys are looking to bring into their organization now. So now they're able to lean more in on Dak Prescott as a leader, lean more in on CeeDee Lamb as a leader, lean more in on those guys and empower those guys and send the message to the locker room that those guys are now the leaders of the team. And we're going to have a singular philosophy. We're going to have a singular direction here. It's behind Brian Schottenheimer. And again, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, because I think that big picture thinking doesn't happen if Micah Parsons takes the deal that's on the table in April. So it's a very interesting subplot and where this goes. And to that end, I'm going to be interested to see the effort and the energy on Thursday, because that's where you have to start when you're talking about building what Brian Schottenheimer wants to build, is the effort and the energy at a really high level against an obviously loaded Philadelphia team, the defending world champs. Can't wait to see what that looks like on Thursday night. Can't wait to do this with you guys all year long. We're going to have a mailbag edition on Thursday. We're going to have a Breer report again on Friday to preview the weekend, to recap what we saw on Thursday night. We got a ton more of this stuff coming for you. Your feedback's always welcome. You can get to me at Albert Breer on Twitter, at Albert R. Breer on Facebook, at Albert_Breer on Instagram. Again, appreciate you guys coming out. Feedback's always welcome. We will see you on Thursday.